there's deep need to protect sacred sites, both big ones and little ones. And my work as a Indigenous and community land rights lawyer, the land rights of rural communities and Indigenous peoples are massively under threat. They are often gazetted as protected areas or conservation areas by governments, or people are just being pushed off their lands to make way for corporations and businesses, essentially. And for example, my colleague and friends, Simon in Mitambo, in the Tharaka people in Kenya, is right now fighting a huge fight to keep his Tharaka people's sacred site from becoming, it's called Kibuku Falls, and they're trying to turn it into a giant hydroelectric project. And it's the most sacred site of his people. And so he's bringing in lawyers, and they're doing everything they can. But also what Simon has been doing, which is amazing, is creating new rituals to re-acknowledge and create more and more energy around those sacred sites. So he and his people have brought up their amazing origin stories and are reenacting the origin story by creating a brand new ritual. And walking along the sacred sites around Kibuku Falls, and bringing in the media and reigniting passion and love of all the surrounding peoples for that sacred site. So I can talk at length about all the legal provisions and all the different statutes and the ways you can do it, but I want to emphasize that it's not just a legal fight. There has to be an outpouring of energy and offerings and spiritual relationship with the deities and the ancestors and the spirits of the site itself, and this is where governance is super interesting, is because there's a human element of governance of sacred sites, but there's an element of a sacred or deity-driven governance of sacred sites. So we humans can walk around and do a bunch of legal things and create lawsuits, but there's an engagement with the spirits of the site itself who are also governing it. And so sacred sites are sacred because of their inherent energies, but they're also the most biodiverse on the planet, and they have this power because there's strong taboos and rules that have always surrounded them, that were told or transmitted to the people who caretake them. And the caretaking humans, in partnership with the deities or the ancestors, are governing those sites in collaboration. And so we can go through the lawsuits and we can do all the legal protections, but there's also an element of giving energy to and working with and listening to the more than human governing bodies of those sites itself. Scientists have all around the world overwhelmingly found, it's not debated anymore, that sacred natural sites are the most biodiverse places on the planet. They're like arcs that we need to protect to bring us into the future, from which we can regenerate species biodiversity. And they're the most biodiverse for a couple of reasons. First, sometimes they were already the most biodiverse, which is why they were made into sacred sites. For example, across India and places in Africa, the sacred forests are repositories of sacred animals, sacred plants, medicines, things that people needed. And when the surrounding areas were becoming, markets and residential areas, it was really important that those areas that the forests were cordoned off and made sacred. And what making them sacred does is it acknowledges the energies and the powers in there and the domain of the more than human world. The sacred forests are not the domain of humans. They are the domain of the spirits and the animals and the plants, who themselves are sentient beings, right? So they were acknowledged as biodiverse places. But then, because there's a whole set of taboos and rules around them, they can become more biodiverse as people are not allowed into them at certain periods of the year, or not allowed to access them to do certain activities. And so the animals and the plants and the fungi and all the beings can then go into those spaces and know that they will be protected. And then the governance of them, there's different kinds of ways that those sites are governed across the world. There are positive mandates, like if you respect this area, you will be blessed, or if you do certain things to honor the deities in here, you will receive blessings or benedictions. And then And those are sort of more holistic in general, but far more prominent around the world are really strict taboos of what you can and cannot do, who can enter a site, how they can enter it, what they can do or not do within it. And that just allows for so much of the sacredness within. And that governance is both human and more than human.